guys. Welcome to this second discussion. Now we are talking about funding and trade opportunity in Africa, and for that we invited two great people. We have Nadia Hasham, who is the trade policy expert at the African Trade Policy Center of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and we have Madam Parminder Vir, who is the board chair of Ongoza and the former CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. She has extensive international experience in entrepreneurship. So, so before we go further, I will just give Madam Parminder the opportunity to just give an opening phrase.
Wow. So this is African Mentors and Mentorship, the Career Show. So firstly, I'd like to thank you, Carl. This is the second time I'm meeting you. I love your can-do attitude. I love the way you're constantly thinking of ways of giving back and empowering African entrepreneurs through knowledge sharing. You may not, and for me, knowledge exchange is much more valuable than funding. Funding is, yes, important, but this constant knowledge exchange and the platforms that you create for that to happen is admirable. So thank you so much.
Wow, it's a pleasure. Madam Nadia Hasham.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks. I'm really excited to be part of this. We always try as much as possible to engage more with the youth, and I say this knowing full well that I am when I am a youth as well. But I think it's always inspiring to hear from the youth, and I work a lot with policymakers and people who've been in industry for a long time, and it's really refreshing to come back and see the innovation and the enthusiasm and the new ideas. So thanks for this.
Great. Just feel like people are running after funding, whereas there are certain things that they have to take into account when designing your idea or just solution to respond to the problem. So my question now, I'll start with Madam Parminder. What are the key elements you take into account when funding a project? Or when someone comes to you and say, Madam Parminder, I need money, I have a nice business that can change the whole Africa. What are the key elements that you take into account?
Wow, okay. For me, entrepreneurship is a mix of art and science, right? And the science is strategic planning, marketing, accounting, finance, management. So that's really the nuts and bolts of your business. If you haven't got that right, then you don't have a business, yeah? And then so that's the science. And then there's the art, which is really the why of your business. I mean, these are the kind of elements that one is looking for when one meets an entrepreneur and who is pitching to you, in terms of their creativity, their risk-taking appetite, their passion. This isn't a copy of another program or copy of another business, but actually that, at the heart of it is the passion that the entrepreneur feels for whatever solution to a massive problem that they've identified. Hard work, it goes without saying. Do not think about being an entrepreneur if your mindset is a 9-to-5 mindset. The entrepreneurship is not for you if that is your mindset, because it is an enormous amount of hard work, consistently, constantly. And that leads to really your resilience, right? And your resilience is daily tested as you go through the ups and downs of running your business. And also your discipline, are you one of these people who are sort of trying things out and then moving? I mean, I have no problem with me being a serial entrepreneur, but it's really important that there's a demonstration of discipline in you and in the team that you are managing. I always used to say there are only 10 fundamentals that you need to get right in setting up your business, and in a sense, your business plan reflects those 10 fundamentals. And I'll just very quickly, if you want, I can go through those, because those are the fundamentals. And it's not just a funding body, but it's not just funders that you're pitching your business to. You're pitching it to potential stakeholders. You're pitching it to potential talent that you might recruit for your business. You're pitching it to absolutely to your customers, yeah? And we know now that customers, we know that they have phenomenal choice in the marketplace. So why should I pay my money to buy your product or your service? So it's really one of the key things is about defining, or really that your idea and your product or service is being really well thought through. There's no excuse. The idea that you can wake up in the morning and say, oh, I've got this business idea, and then pitch up at in front of an investor is you just can't do that. You've got to spend a lot of time in really understanding the problem that you are trying to solve, that your particular business is solving. And you've already identified who has that problem, right? And what is this rocket science, this extraordinary, awesome solution that you're bringing. So I think really defining your product and service, and you cannot invest enough time in doing that. Obviously the next thing is that you really do have an understanding of your market, the market opportunity for this, and that you've done there's some traction. You can show me some evidence that you've gone from an idea and defining your product and service, and that you've actually also begun to develop that idea, whether it's a tech, whether it's an offline business, or whether it's an online business. You also have an understanding of how you're pricing that. Are you pricing yourself out of the market? Are you underselling yourself? So really understanding the competitor market, if they also have the same products that you are doing. And then what's your imaginative creative, which is where the art comes in for me. What imagination are you bringing to the table in terms of marketing your products to either to the clients or to your or to the customers? I think the key thing that everybody looks at is who's the team behind you. Are you a one-woman, one-man show, or do you really have a well-structured team behind you who've also bought into your passion, as it were, and that there is a structure, that your company is structured, and there are many different ways of structuring your company, and that you're managing. I want to see evidence that you're managing your resources well. I mean, there used to be a joke about, $5,000, are you really going to spend it on your business, or are you going to go off and buy a car, a second wife, or a house, or whatever? But actually having that, being prudent and with how you manage your resources. As part of those 10 fundamentals is obviously raising money and building relationships and building the widest possible network. And those are the components that then go into, assembling your business plan. And ultimately, is the business plan. I guess for me, the final thing is that your business plan tells a story. It tells a story about you, your passion, your product and service, and all those other elements that I've spoken about. I always say to entrepreneurs, don't pitch, tell a story. Hook me in with the why and the solution to the why, and what's the big problem that you've identified that nobody else has, but more importantly, that you've also found a solution to that problem.
Oh, great. Talking about the key things to take into account. Madam Parminder talk about the why, talk about the story. For you, what are the key things you take into account? What are the things that when someone says it for you, you can buy?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think Parminder has already, covered so many bases. I think the one about identifying a unique solution to a problem that's so critical. You need a motivation for what you're proposing to people, whether that's a product or a service, equally. But maybe I can speak to a couple of other areas in the context of, because I work on trade and particularly intra-Africa trade, what we might look for in terms of how you're able to orient your business towards expansion or towards other markets. So maybe you have a small concept and maybe you're now trying to expand. And I think one of the key things is to look at standards. So make sure that you're meeting some standards, whether that's nationally or that's in the markets that you want to expand to. You have to be able to deliver a quality product or a quality service, and so look at what those standards are, and try to meet them and try to get certified. This also means that you want to operate formally. So I know a lot of times youth and smaller businesses, we all start informally, and it's good. It's a good way to try to test your concept, but ultimately you do have to transition to operating formally. This means you're making formal payments and you're accepting formal payments, and by having a formal payment history, you also make yourself more accessible to finance and to credit. So I think to your question about being able to be investable, you need to have a business that should show a track record, and one of the ways to do that is to have a formal payment history, a formal account, formal operations. So I would really encourage the youth to look at the formal aspect of operating businesses. And then something else that Parminder said as well, which is you have to understand the customers that you're working with. And this particularly applies to if you're thinking about expanding into new markets or sourcing your products from other markets, you need to understand those markets. And I once talked to an entrepreneur from here in Kenya. I'm in Kenya, and she was saying that she actually spent 2 or 3 years or however long it was in Ethiopia just understanding the market that she wanted to enter. So I think that you can't really understate the value of understanding the context that you want to work in. And then something else maybe to build on that Parminder said, which is on building your team. You really have to know, take time to understand what it is that you don't know, and identify the people around you that can fill those gaps. You don't have to know everything as an entrepreneur. But you have to be able to know where you can go to find those skills and find that information, and that might include mentorship as well. What we're doing here. So I think those are probably some of the areas that we usually look at. And because I again work on trade, we also look at, as I said, this track record or this viability of companies to be able to expand to other markets. And most of the African market is made up of small and medium-sized enterprises. So it is really the biggest engine of growth and expansion. So I think you shouldn't feel that because you have a small business, you can't compete. You absolutely can compete. And I think you just have to look at some of these areas that we've been speaking about. Thanks.
Can I just follow up on what Nadia's just said?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because she's raised some amazing ideas. Intra-Africa trade, we know that Africa historically throughout history has had intra-Africa trade, right? And for me, when in working across 54 African countries, an entrepreneur in Zambia, for me it wasn't like, we'd like to sell our product to somewhere in Europe, and I would say, forget, no, you've got 53 other countries across the continent that you should be thinking about selling your product first, and then think about UK, Europe, USA. So I think the intra-Africa trade agreement is fundamental to the African continent, and at the heart of it, who's going to drive the success of this intra-Africa trade agreement are the SMEs, yeah? And we've got to do everything that we can to equip the SMEs across the continent to be able to leverage this agreement for the benefit of the African continent. If those products and services take off across those 54 African countries, the world will want to come to you rather than you trying to go through hoops, and they are horrible hoops that you have to go through in terms of regulation, certification. Who has the time and the money to do that? Yeah. So I would say the mindset, and I would say this to the UN, is that you've got to empower and facilitate and support African SMEs to be able to do that across the continent. Yeah. And all the things that, Corinne was alluding, she spoke about this very eloquently earlier on, which is there's no shortage of information, entrepreneurs and SMEs, right? And, and it's all available online. So that's one thing. But also from my own experience of having traveled to 50 of the 54 African countries, Africa has a very well developed entrepreneurship ecosystem. So the first thing that I would do as an entrepreneur, if I'm in Kenya, is to say, where are the support organizations for entrepreneurship development in the way that Career Show is one example of that as well, that I can go to. I have this amazing business idea. I know there's a market for it in Kenya, but I also know that there could be a market for it in Uganda and Rwanda, just even staying within the Eastern region. Who can I talk to? Who can hold my hand so that I will make mistakes, but I won't have to make the obvious mistakes? Yeah. So I would encourage those who are listening as part of this Career Show African Mentors is really engage with your local entrepreneurship ecosystem. Be a part of that. Find them, join them, become, go to them, because one of their biggest challenges is finding quality entrepreneurs, disciplined entrepreneurs, committed entrepreneurs, to be able to take up the extraordinary facilities and training programs, coaching programs, mentoring programs that they're offering, because they are also getting funded from organizations both within the continent but also from outside. And their biggest challenge, and I know that from chairing Ongoza, is finding entrepreneurs who can really avail themselves of the services that this one organization, that there's hundreds of them in Africa, in virtually in every country, there is an entrepreneurship ecosystem. Support organizations, yeah.
Great. I would just have to say that with a bit fast in going into intra-African trade, we have questions there, and we are coming there. Before
I'm passionate about
we go there, we can feel it, madam. We can feel it. But before we go there, I have to ask again another question concerning the funding, so that people listening to us can have a clear view. According to you, what are the major errors that you commit when focusing only on the money? Because I am sure that many youth have been coming to you. Many youth, I think even in Kenya, many youth across Africa have been coming to you, tell you that they have this, they have that, they can implement. But why? Because they are focusing on money. I believe that there are certain things that they don't take really in account when designing the solution for your project, the solution for the problem. And the next thing is, if you can give some advice to our young people participating to the mentorship program on how they have to structure their project, what can you say?
Money follows good ideas. Money finds good ideas. Money finds talent.